2, 1, live. Hello, welcome back to RIPDebt Runs 2023. We're here with chexhuman, who is going to be running some Swordless Link to the Past here. So, I'm gonna introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm chexhuman, and I'm running a Link to the Past. This is a glitched category called Swordless No EG, and I'm joined by Taj So on commentary. Hello, Taj.
Good evening, everybody. So this category is pretty new in terms of just the history of everything, mainly because we didn't have a way for being able to do certain dungeons, but as we found out more and more about the game, we were able to figure that stuff out, and now we have this.
All right, so I'll go ahead and count us off. 3, 2, 1, go.
So right off the bat, well, we got to listen to Zelda kind of talk to us in our sleep. But once Uncle leaves the house, we're able to go ahead and leave as well. And right off the bat, we're going to start off by just going out of bounds to the right to get past some of the guards that block your way, which lets us explore the world in the rain state. And the rain state is kind of interesting because there's only sprite obstacles like around your house and the castle. Everywhere else, it's completely empty. And we'll see that once we get a little further in, but for now we're just doing something called the River Funny Auto Walk thing. We're actually trying to get into this slope in a particular way so that we hit the transition just off the edge of it, and for some reason Link just walks halfway across right onto the bridge. It's amazing.
That's a pretty good one.
Yeah, it was nice and quick. The next clip we're going to do is to save a few seconds on this overworld screen getting to the Eastern Palace. We're going to jump off the bottom of the screen, and the screen itself doesn't change until we cause a transition, but we're kind of wrapping from the bottom all the way to the top, and the entrance to the dungeon is near the top. So once we do a couple of hops here, we go down, and there's the stairs to the entrance of the palace.
I want to jump in and say, during practice for this run, I PB'd a couple of times, totaling about 8 minutes. So we'll hopefully go under estimate, and also, it's also possible we won't be underestimate. It is very possible we'll have to redo certain sections if things go wrong. But
it is
I hope
possible,
that won't happen.
Yeah, it is possible to go over estimate, but I have a high doubt that that'll happen. You've been grinding out runs just all this past week, and none of them have even come close to what your estimate is.
That is true.
But kind of the reason for the 8 minutes of time save that you've had recently is because we've been doing a lot of rerouting of this category, adding in a bunch of new ideas that have been present in other categories of similar caliber, as well as a few other new things that have been discovered. For the most part, this dungeon is pretty normal. There's not too much we can do. We just lack the equipment to do the really fun things.
And I want to remember to get a heart here so that we have the maximum 3. The Link to the Past runners will know we have to take damage to quickly get the big key. There's a popo I can't get out of the way. I just have to run through it.
Yeah, we literally have no way to defend ourselves. The only thing we can do is pick up pots and throw them at enemies right now.
Have to go right. I believe we'll get about 4 messages from Zelda during the course of this. And it slows down progress a little bit, but hey, at least we get boots quickly.
Well, as long as we don't get one of those messages right after you grab the pendant, because that can cause a hard lock.
Yeah, we're kind of getting to that situation.
Oh, you might have to wait after killing the boss a little bit?
If things go bad, but this should be pretty scripted.
Yeah, there's not too much RNG to react to here, or the stuff that we need to react to is not difficult to dodge. So even though we're traipsing around with only 1 heart, and you know these green Igors do 1 heart of damage if they run into you, so it's treacherous but manageable.
Hello there. Wow. The arrows.
Yeah, arrow routing in this category is very important because we actually wind up using a ton of arrows on the Armos fight here. We have to use 18 minimum to be able to defeat the boss, and we'll only have 12 left over at best, and there's a whole bunch of other things we're going to need to defeat on the way to the Hyrule Castle dungeons to rescue Zelda. We do need to do that.
You need to wait here.
Okay.
Because I've never really...
Yeah, that was pretty close, so...
Yeah. Never tried to beat that text with a 2-cycle red Igors, so better be safe here.
Answering Talbrick in the chat, rescuing Zelda is not necessary. Oh, I guess it is required because this is an all dungeons category, isn't it?
Yeah, we haven't really put that in writing. It is either an all bosses category or an all dungeons category, and it appears to be an all dungeons category where we have to complete every dungeon, including escape. It's more impressive that way. Routing could be strange and interesting without escape, but for now, all dungeons.
Well, there's a lot of advantages that even completing escape gives us, such as, you know, having the corrected world state tab to be normal. Makes it a lot easier to access the Thieves Town dungeon, because until you actually rescue Zelda, that entrance doesn't exist. And we'd have to find some other way of doing it. Probably by beating Aga 1, but...
Yeah, exactly.
So, as I said earlier, there's basically nothing for us to really worry in terms of enemies when we're on the overworld in the rain state here. But we do need to get into the castle, and the best way that we have found to do that is using this slope right here. And actually, Chex had a recent discovery for that clip in particular that lets him do it in only 2 dash buffers, and it's kind of weird because the dash buffers in the rain state when we don't have the ability to punch are a little different compared to dash buffers and everywhere else. We actually have to face up or down, then hit to the left or right and A at the same time, and then turn to up again, which is very different to normal dash buffer clipping, which is without that dash turn to up.
Yeah,
so it winds up being a bit slower and more finicky.
And the way I do this is I don't change my grip. Whereas with normal boots clipping, I do like to change my grip. We have our maximum arrows coming out of Eastern, which is nice.
Yeah, we still need to use quite a few to defeat the enemies along the way, just for the small keys. Unfortunately, in the rooms where those enemies reside, there are no pots to throw at them. And we don't want to use bombs because there's a better use for them in a little later. We do skip the blue boomerang here, mainly because the red boomerang is a superior item to have for certain glitch setups later on. And it's just easier to get the red boomerang if we don't have one at all.
Okay. We'll just do this. Oh.
Still gonna go. Oh, oops. Careful. Careful.
Okay, that didn't go as planned. So now we'll use probably 1 pot. There we go. Yeah, we should have shot the green guard instead of tried to avoid it.
I like how Zelda tried to tell us, hey, there's a secret passage off to the right of the castle. Are you coming to rescue me? When she can hear the battle ensuing outside of her cell. I'll give her the benefit of the doubt that she can't see us, but she can at least hear something happening. Anyway.
Unfortunately, our extra text box. Here we do a juke, by the way.
Yeah, so we're going to use the bomb in this doorway so that we can hit the transition within the doorway from the other side. And this actually puts us in the castle lobby, and by doing a couple of downward transitions here, we can actually just leave the castle, which saves a lot of backtracking from the basement. It's about the only glitchy thing that we can do for a little while here.
Yeah, that had just one extra pause buffer.
Now, luckily for the rest of the sewers here, we only need to use one more arrow. There is a rat that holds a key at the end of the sewers here, and we do need to kill it. And luckily, we've got enough arrows that even with a couple of misses, which are unlikely, we'll be able to get past that. And even failing that, we have a couple of bombs.
This is true. Just a couple. Oh, hello.
One of the reasons we actually do want to do the escape sequence is there's a set of chests behind a bombable wall near the end of this sequence here.
Yes.
And that holds a bunch of money, some arrows, and some bombs. Just a pretty good ammo refill. And it's really inconvenient to go for that in any other way than just doing it as part of escape. So that's one of the other reasons why we do it.
Happy the rats didn't come after me just then.
Yeah, they like to stand in front of the doorway. Or stand in front of the block there. Or that doorway, too. Just a whole party of them.
Yeah, arrows are not particularly precious, but it is nice to hang on to them and conserve them.
It's better to have arrows than to run out of them when you need them.
Right.
We actually can't get mirror in this category, at least until we rescue Zelda, because we never visited our uncle, and so we actually have an invisible follower.
It is possible.
It is possible, but we'd have to visit Uncle first and do what we call deleting the sword, which winds up being really slow.
It's fair. Resources not considered, it might be faster. I timed that out. But the problem is, it's too difficult, and your resources, you don't get those escape resources like you talked about.
Yeah, since we start the game with an invisible follower, we actually can't get the old man to follow us. He doesn't like if anything else is following you, even if it's just the voice of Zelda in your head. Zelda doesn't care. She'll take over her own voice.
Yeah, so now that escape's done, we need to collect some stuff. And we clip up to get the mirror, then we're going into Palace of Darkness, and we'll get the hammer. We'll need that for a couple of bosses.
Yeah, it's very much required that we need the hammer in this run. Specifically, Moldorm we cannot kill. Since we never get a sword, hammer is the only other option to defeat that boss. But here we're doing another screen wrap, just like we did to get into Eastern Palace to enter a cave that's higher up on the mountain. And now we're doing a different clip called a bomb clip, which involves placing a bomb on a pretty precise coordinate and then just dashing into the explosion. The way that the knockback works out, it kind of kicks you right through the slope, and we did it in such a way that we can just hold a direction, and the game tries to kick us out of the wall, but then towards the bottom of the screen. which causes a transition and brings us over to Palace of Darkness. Now, in doing that, we did what is called wrapping the EG map, which means that the EG map itself is kind of a 16 by 16 set of rooms, and we just went from the bottom of it to the top of it. When that happens, all sprites are despawned. So we can still interact with pots and chests and such, but all enemies and the like are just gone, which makes this a bit easier.
It does.
Now we actually picked up a big key here. That is a very special big key. Well, the game doesn't consider it special until we actually pick it up, but right now the game thinks we're in a cave, and we just picked up a big key while we're in a cave, and because of the way that the memory collisions work, that big key gave us a big key for the Hyrule Castle, the sewers, Desert Palace, and Tower of Hera. Note that the sewers does not normally have a big key, so we have that anyway.
Good to know.
But now we've got our hammer, which is our best damage-dealing source for most things. Not everything. Arrows are still good for a lot of enemies to defeat them. Next up, we do need to go to the Kakariko town. We've got a couple of things to pick up. They're just bottles and bug net. Bug net is used to hold a fairy for safety, and it's also used for the Aghanim fights. We could use the hammer during the Aghanim fights, but the net is so much easier, and it costs barely anything to actually get it. In fact, most times I would argue that it probably saves time because you're not wasting a bunch of cycles by missing.
Oh, yeah. Hammer also gets to the point where if you miss, then you run the risk of a game over.
Yeah, actually when you miss, you just get hit, and each of those does, I guess, a full heart usually, but then it's half heart because we wind up getting blue mail in this as another safety.
Oh, yeah. Alright, so we get the red potion.
Alright, so we're still collecting things. We are going to enter another dungeon and actually enter it kind of properly, other than the fact that we're clipping out of bounds to get to it. But we're entering the desert dungeon, but we're going to use that potion we just bought in a particular way so that we can reach another dungeon. So, because of that big key that we got while we were getting the hammer, we actually have the big key for this dungeon. As I said earlier, we do have the desert dungeon big key. And we're going to pick up a small key up here just as a safety because the next bit right after the YBA is a long hover. And hovers of that length are usually pretty hard, so we're picking up another key just to give us an alternate route in case things don't work out. But now we're going to use the bottle, or specifically the red potion, and trying to hit that door on the same frame. Missed, but it's easy to reset. After we drink the potion correctly, we'll back the screen out and then transition down, and then we'll be right in Misery Mire. In fact, in the room where you're supposed to use Samari to hold down a switch. And we need to be able to backtrack from there. And the reason we need to hover is because if we didn't grab that small key from the torch, there is a small key down at the very bottom. That's normally for a big key door that you'd open from the other side. You're not supposed to really go from this way going down first. You're always coming from the bottom. But Chex, being the god gamer he is, gets to hover first try.
Phew. Haha, sweat.
So the main reason we're going to Misery Mire so early is we need that Cane of Samaria. The Cane of Samaria is by far the most broken item in the entire game. It's not even close. It just has so many different uses for glitches in every different way you can think of. And immediately after we get it, we're going to beeline to an area where we can use it. There's a room upstairs of this dungeon that has a property of a moving wall. And one of the weird things about those rooms is we can set up holding items in a doorway much more easily in those kind of rooms than anywhere else, just because the moving wall exists and hasn't been moved yet. And because of that, we're able to do what's called a Samaria transition corruption. Now, like I said earlier, the underworld is made up of a 16 by 16 grid of rooms, and by doing a Samaria transition corruption, we can move up by one row of those rooms at a time, and we're going to move up 7 right now. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we just moved a long way along that grid. And now we're going to do this little teleport here. Kind of the same principle as the bomb clip, but just using the dashing to get into the slope a little better. And as you can see, we're now in Swamp Palace. The game still thinks we're in Desert Palace, by the way, so we can use that big key that we got in the Cave State Palace of Darkness. Get ourselves the hook shot. And because our camera is broken from those Samaria transition corruptions, we can also just transition up there and go to Tower of Hera, which lets us get the Moon Pearl. You can't see it, but we did get the Moon Pearl.
So that's our main section of collection. We still need to collect the fire rod, so we'll do that now.
Yeah, you may notice that we're breaking up these dungeons in kind of weird ways, but it's better for us to have all of these various items than it is to just do these dungeons as one-shots, because we have ways of moving around the EG map a lot more easily later on. So there, Chex did what's called a mirror wrap, but it's a little weird in this one because we didn't transition back the same way that we wrapped. It was mainly used to kind of realign Link's coordinates with what's drawn on screen. And that lets us get off the mountain really quickly. So now we're in Skullwoods. We're going to do another Samaria transition corruption. This time, even though we are going to load a room that's above us, we're not going to transition to it. One thing that loading these rooms does is it changes what's in the chests, which, in this case, gives us the big key. Normally, that chest holds the compass of the dungeon. So we're able to kind of bypass interesting barriers, and you can see we kind of came out the other side of that locked door, which is another consequence of moving around the EG map with the Samaria.
One thing
and with bottles too, but...
One thing I figured out with this grind is just a different way of setting up the bomb jump. And I, in the past, have done 5 sword buffers just to line up. And, I mean, just to get the timing right. And I do that here too, except I'm moving slightly in between them, and that kind of gets the positioning right too. It's very lenient, but it's just a little trick.
Yeah, you only need to get within 6 pixels of the edge of the pit, especially because you're using the bonk method, rather than, I think, the 2-pixel window for when you don't bonk.
Exactly. Now we get that red boom. As I try not to get hit by Pose. Blanks W.
Alright, so now we're into the Thieves' Town dungeon. We're actually not going to complete this dungeon the way you would think. We are not going to beat Blind in this part of the run. That will come later. We're actually going to use this time, or this dungeon rather, to go beat another boss from a completely different dungeon. Mainly because getting to that boss is really slow in most other methods that we have access to. Especially because we never get the flippers. For those of you who don't know, we're going to go kill Argus.
Yeah, and I want to, as an aside, shout outs to Taj, though, for developing this run and all bosses. This run is partly based on all bosses. So over the last 3 years or so, as all bosses has evolved, this run has evolved with it, at least in this rerouting we've done this year.
Yeah, we've more or less tried to realign it with what Hoda Ruby had actually done with the all bosses categories, where he was doing a lot of beating dungeons from other dungeons to save on travel time.
Okay. And we wanted to look. Okay, let's get these resources down here, and then we'll be clipping the desert. And like you said, we want to fight Argus. When I first looked at this category again, I wanted to fight Argus in a different dungeon, but that was not possible due to the way crystals and pendants are collected. So we have to use these now. Oops. Oh, I can't dash past that guy.
Yeah, dashing is a bit more treacherous when you don't have a sword. You can't just go through enemies. But I think one of the major reasons why we couldn't beat Argus from another dungeon is we needed that dungeon's prize elsewhere, specifically Vitreous, because we don't have a great way to get the Mired Dungeon prize other than what we do in this run later on. So right now we're back in Desert, hitting a different section of it, this time getting the gloves. The gloves are not 100% necessary, but they're very nice to have to make doing Ice Palace easier. Also, what you just saw there was not a mistake. Chex did actually need to take damage from the Beamos, and he did need to map. Because now we're going to do something called a Death Hole. We're doing another Samari Transition Corruption, but now we created a bunch of holes that you can't see right now. They exist, they're there, you can't see them, and we're going to die at the same time that we would be transported from that hole. Now that actually loads the room for where that hole would lead us, which is a room right next to Argus. And the reason we mapped is because we haven't died yet in this run or brought up the map, which means that the Death Hole would try to load the pallets from a Fairy Revive, and because we haven't loaded any pallets for that purpose, it would just be all black, and this would be a lot more annoying to do.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. And I didn't have time to say it, but we were able to skip past the first phase of Argus by just scrolling him mostly off screen, so that he recognizes that all his puffs are gone.
Yeah. There's a lot we don't have time to say.
I'm trying.
But the fact that you got across that STCs can create holes all over the map, so let's fall into one. And by the way, let's die at the same time we fall through it on the frame perfectly.
You see,
that's an essential part of this route.
What's funny is that I may have found this method for doing it for Argus, but I actually got that from Gland because he found a way of doing that in GT to get to Aga 2 from the meetup room in the basement.
Oh, that's right. I remember
that. Yeah, Gland found that a long time ago, and then I saw that while just kind of digging through archives at one point and thought, oh, I should try using that elsewhere. And it worked out really well, because prior to that, we would have had to go into what is called heavy VRAM corruption, which...
It's not for everybody. Not for everybody's consoles either.
Yeah. Now we're actually doing a real mirror wrap. This time to not just... actually, we're kind of displacing Link's coordinates because of that transition we do, and it takes us like 3/4 of the way over the overworld screen for Ice Palace, which actually puts us right in that little bit of land right in front of the entrance. It's just very convenient that way. Should I cover Icebreaker? I mean, it's a lesser glitch, but
yeah,
it is kind of important. We actually wind up using the fact that when you're in door state, you can kind of walk through collision, and by placing the Samaria block in a particular way and moving into it, we can preserve that door state for longer than the game expects you to, and we can just kind of walk through that one barrier. You could actually walk about halfway through the room if there was enough collision for it, but there isn't, so we don't.
I have a magic problem now, so I have to farm or something. Not quite sure.
Oh, I guess you're a little bit less than full. You got hit by the anti-fairy?
No, I messed up Diver Down, actually. I mean, Icebreaker. Ice thing.
Let's see. Trying to think if there's anything you can do from here. I haven't been paying attention to the prize packs. Don't forget blue mail, by the way.
Oh, I did forget.
Oh, we don't have the key, do we? Or did you get it? Okay, you got it.
I got it. But I forgot.
Cool.
Until you said it. Good. But yeah, we have to farm here. What are we going to do with this guy? Do that.
Ooh, this farming is not going to be good because we've gone past the small magic on the variety pack. Oh, there's one! Lucky!
That's good. Oh, you know what? Maybe we didn't need to farm. I miscounted.
Better safe than sorry, because we do need to use the entire magic bar here to get past the first phase of Cold Stare. This fight is a little bit scary, because, well, especially if you don't get blue mail, because then running into these eyeball puffs deals 4 hearts of damage. It's still pretty scary here. Oh boy. Alright, so that's one reason why we get the fairy.
Yeah. I get aggressive when they go into my safety corner. I shouldn't do that.
Well, it's not exactly a corner, it's just the entire top wall, right? Because you can avoid the falling ice.
It is, but I like having the left side because I'm left-handed, I guess. I don't really know.
Well, Link is left-handed, so yeah.
Yeah. It's just, I feel like it's best for space.
Yeah, it is, because the hammer is kind of more offset to the right, so you want that side to be more exposed.
Yes. So we took a death, which is bad, but we emptied the contents of the bottle, which is good.
Yeah, we didn't lose too much from the death, thankfully. Now, if we had been brought back to the entrance of the dungeon, that would have been really bad.
Yeah, bad, and we have to reset the dungeon, the world state, to have the crystal drop at the end.
Yeah, it's something called the Pendant Crystal Conflict, which is only important, I think, here. This is the only time where it really matters.
Yeah.
It just means that if you die in Ice Palace and get kicked back to the entrance, then you just have to leave Mirror and then go back in.
Now we have desert. It's not a normal desert, but desert vitreous. And it's also a desert mire that we've been for since desert is so powerful, like you mentioned yesterday.
Yeah, it's oddly located within the underworld map where it's just convenient to get to so many different dungeons. You would have thought that Hera would be better for that, considering it has pieces all over the place, but it turns out that Desert is actually kind of better.
It is.
Or at least, it's better to go from Desert to somewhere, but it's better to go from somewhere to Hera. It's kind of weird.
True.
We actually picked up 2 potions there. They will both be used, but ideally not for healing.
Yeah, we have those for required YBAs later for this category.
Alright, so next thing we're actually going to do, to actually get to Maya, we're not going to use a potion again, because potions are slow and expensive and have better uses elsewhere. We're going to do what's called a hook push. Now, this takes...
These are a lot of fun.
They are fun. They take a lot of different inventory items, especially when we're swordless. And we're using all kinds of different inventory items to fill up what are called Ancilla slots just to set up memory in such a way that the hookshot does that. We're just really screwing with how the hookshot works. That particular method was a slot 9 Samaria block. Normally, things only go in through slots 0 through 4. But we decided to figure out how to put a Samaria block in slot 9, which messes with how the hookshot works. We did throw a Samaria block in the void there to set up something called Spooky Action. It's really, when you throw the block into the void, it sets what's called an altitude variable to 255. And it turns out that the fire rod has a splash damage aspect to it, and when it hits something, it will set that splash damage up by that altitude, which happens to be on the other side of that bomb wall. So we were able to hit that switch without going into that room. And so now we're going to do another miss slot that is called Murder Bomb. And the premise behind it is we get a bomb in those back slots, specifically slot 9, and by using the hook shot, we can extend how long the bomb explodes, because the explosion is actually part of the whole fuse timer, and we reset that fuse timer with every single hook shot use. And so that just lets us get past all these small eyes much more quickly than usual, and without a whole lot of resource usage. That way we can also save some arrows for the big eye.
This is true. Yeah, that went pretty well. It can go haywire. Might take a couple bombs to set up if I do it wrong. I rely on the spark of the boomerang. So we correct world state here, since we started in the light world. But we have to go back to the light world, so now we use the mirror properly. Now it's time to fight Lanmo.
We do need to actually kill Lanmo as part of the category definition for the rules. We already do have the Desert Pendant, but there actually is another reason why we need to kill Lanmolas. And that is because we have our method of defeating Ganon during this segment.
That's true.
Now, Ganon cannot take damage from anything other than the sword in the first few phases. He is actually hard-coded against damage from the hammer, even though it does the same type of damage as your tempered sword. But the way we deal with Ganon in this category is we instead delete him. Which means that we write the boss defeated flag of a boss room and just write that over the same room where Ganon is normally fought. We do this through a series of glitches that we'll get into right after Chex gets past the Lanmo fight here.
And I'm gonna save 1/8 of magic to delete Ganon.
So, by defeating Lanmolas, we get what's called the boss defeated flag for this room. And by using a YBA in the door leaving this room, we actually move that boss defeated flag to the room below. Now, that's not quite far enough. We are going to have to move it again, and we're going to do that with a Samaria Transition Corruption. But there's a couple of interesting consequences from having the boss defeated flag set. You actually can't take damage from stationary spikes, and you can't take damage from your bombs. Now, that second part is actually important for us because it turns out that if we create holes in the room coming up here and fall in that hole, we wind up in the Ganon fight room. However, if we cause a death hole when kind of falling into there, we actually write whatever flags we had to that room. So we need to write the boss defeated flag down, then create the holes with another Samaria Transition Corruption, then cause a death hole, Now, you may have noticed in Swamp, we had a setup with a bomb that worked to do the death hole, but since we can't take damage from bombs, that's not going to work here. Instead, we're going to use the BMOS. And this actually was interesting to set up, or to find a setup for it. Shoutouts to FSG for letting me figure out how to do this. We actually use one BMOS shot to hit us, which sets up what's called a frame rule, for a second shot to hit us on the correct frame, because a death hole is frame perfect. So Chex is just getting into position for the first shot. He also placed that Samaria block because it slows Link down just enough to get into the hole there, and there we go, we got the death hole. Now Ganon is deleted. We will find out what consequences are of that later on.
We're also reminded that I died in Ice Palace.
Yes. So here we're going to do a map wrap, which is a little bit dangerous. As of right now, if we move to the right at all, the game hard locks. So we don't want to do that.
It's a lot to redo if we hard lock there.
Thankfully, we did not do that.
Yeah. Didn't really think about that for the marathon. We didn't have to put that in there. But it does.
No, we didn't, but it's the fastest way of getting there.
It is fast, and
actually, for this route, I don't think... For this route, it might not actually be the fastest. Because I was just thinking about it, but when we're getting Red Boom, we could actually just mirror to Light World, then hook shop over to it.
Oh. Right.
I only just now thought of that during the marathon run.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah,
sadly, that will be
all bosses things we should have considered earlier.
Yeah, and sadly, it won't be usable in the in the reroute that we have in mind.
Right.
Anyway, here's Moldor.
Oops.
We kind of just bypassed the Herapot.
Yeah. Good grief. This isn't going correctly.
No. Stay on the platform.
Believe it or not. Alright. Hair is done. Next up is Turtle Rock.
Turtle Rock is just so convenient that there's just so many different ways to get into there from the overworld. Just so many ways to shortcut it just right off the bat when you have basic out-of-bounds clipping.
Right. We use 2 different entrances to Turtle Rock in this run. Fun fact, I forgot how to do this while I was talking.
Yeah, I was wondering what was going on. I was like, which way are we going? I hope you don't press up here yet. Yeah, we do another mirror wrap, which again brings about 3/4 of the way across that overworld screen. And by positioning ourselves correctly vertically, we can just wind up right on a ledge that brings us right to the laser bridge entrance. Huge shortcut. Now, thanks to hook pushing, we actually don't need to get the big key here, which is very convenient. Not that it would be all that slow to get, it's just nice we don't have to.
Definitely.
So this is a completely different method of hook pushing. This is called a stuck push, and actually a boomerang modified stuck push. So we used a misslotted hook to kind of confuse the second hook, which is now in the normal slots, and yeah, there's too much to explain for how that works, for how quick it goes.
Yeah, it's one of those things I just don't really know how to explain well.
It takes a lot to actually explain it well, a lot more time than you actually have in any kind of a run. Especially with how many different methods we have for doing it. But the basic premise for a lot of hook pushing is mislot something, fill other slots, profit.
Still waiting for those dividends.
I mean, you got to here without the big key. I figure that's a pretty good profit. Saves you money.
It's true.
Alright, so after Turtle Rock here, the next thing we have is we're going to beat one boss, but get 2 crystals. Not at the exact same time, but we're going to get 2 crystals pretty close to each other. We're actually getting the Mire Crystal and the Pod Crystal. Now, the Mire Crystal is weird, because we have to do some interesting glitches to actually get the Mire Dungeon state loaded. There's a particular door in Hyrule Castle that when you walk across it, it changes your dungeon ID. And this happens in the normal game. You transition from the castle into the sewers. That is technically a completely different dungeon. Now, it turns out that the same kind of floor tile that is in that doorway is all over the place on the overworld. And if you slash or hammer it, it sets the value to change your dungeon ID. However, whenever you walk around in the underworld, when not in a door, that value just gets set to 0, so we have to find a way to keep that value, and to do that, we do what's called Overworld Conveyor. Now, Overworld Conveyor is about misslotting a bomb while on the overworld, and then having it explode, or you misslot a bomb, pick it up, and then have it explode after you take damage because the bomb gets dropped, and that sets like a couple of timers for some bounces. And if that gets stuck at a value other than 0, so now Link is just constantly moving down. And because of that, we can use slopes to just clip through all kinds of collision, which lets us get into the Palace of Darkness entrance. And because we are still clipping through... I'm gonna shot.
Got it.
Okay. Yeah, I actually had to stop explaining there because there is an audio cue that Chex needed, and I almost forgot about that.
Okay.
Yeah, there's an audio cue.
That's what I was most nervous about in this run. So glad to get that.
Yeah, so...
what did I just do?
I was still in the process of explaining how to get Overworld Conveyor. Now we have to go through all this. So, actually, if you don't mind, bring up your map before we get too much further, just to kind of prove that we are in the Mire Dungeon.
Level 6?
Yeah. Palace of Darkness is level 1. But, so by bringing the clipping state into the dungeon, we're able to kind of move down and wrap the room. And when we transition in the south side, or we transition south in the door in the middle of the room, that is acting like what we call a super tile transition, but we need to YBA that transition, otherwise we wind up inside the Helmasaur room and stuck in a wall. So we YBA just so that we don't get stuck. And then through a couple of other transitions, we get everything resynced so that we can go fight Helmasaur. It's very weird and technical, and I'm surprised that it works at all.
Yeah, and one of my favorite parts about your kind of developing that tech is you posted the musical score to Dark World Dungeon, and you highlighted the notes that you use for the cue.
Yeah, it's an 8-frame window for the audio cue, and at 140 BPM for the music, it's actually a pretty reasonable audio cue to hit. It's like right on an 8th note.
Yeah, it's in the 6th bar, basically.
Oh yeah, and then Malmo's bringing up in chat, this is our first hook speed. Is it, though? I think it is. It probably is. But we actually use hook speed in the Helmasaur fight. That way the hammer hitbox gets extended in front of Link a bit better. Because normally, trying to hammer something while facing up is terrible. The hitbox is too close to Link, but with hook speed it gets a bit disjointed. and is further away, allowing for easier hammer hits. So now we're doing another hook push, a boomerang modified stuck push again. A little weird with that, but we're getting it all figured out here. And as I kind of said before, Helmosaur's room is right below the entrance there, so if we could just hook push to it, we're fine. And we actually did the hook push in that particular location so that the crystal falls on the right side of the screen. And if the crystal is way over there when we collect it, we skip a fanfare, which is a nice, 10-second time save?
Something like that. I'm really happy that the fanfare skip is in this run, because it's the first run where I've been able to use it. And it's also used in EG categories, and I haven't approached those yet.
I thought you had for a couple of them after Hoda Ruby's reroutes.
Not after that, no.
Huh.
So next up,
next we've got Agate 2, right?
That's right.
Yeah, so we're heading back to Turtle Rock. We're going to use one of those other overworld entrances. And we're going to do what's called a lava dive. It turns out that one of the rooms with all the pipes that happens to be over a big pool of, I guess it's magma, technically, but lava dive is easier to say. That room is just one gigantic hole, but the hole itself doesn't damage Link if you fall into it. It just takes you somewhere else, and that somewhere else happens to be Agate 2.
Got the fun quick hop. Oops. I just was overthinking it and did hook speed for no reason.
Yeah, we're doing a Samara Transition Corruption here to bypass a big key door, because we still don't want to get that Turtle Rock big key if we don't have to. Yeah, it may look like that Link just fell through a floor there, but no, he's actually over the magma. The camera is offset from where Link actually is in the room. And now we have a bit of a rainbow fight. And that happens because of falling down into the hole into the fight. There's something about just when you fall, it affects certain palettes differently that have transparency effects, which are present in this fight for the Agate 2 clones.
So close to a triple-double.
Alright, so can Chex clip out of the arena in time?
Barely.
Pretty good. Got to save some time from it. Basically, after the bat spawns, if it goes off screen, then it immediately starts the next cutscene with the bird taking Link to the pyramid. So next up, we're actually going to go finish off Thieves Town. Now, we already have the Thieves Crystal, but we still need to go defeat Blind. And to do that, we're actually going to enter the Uncle Tunnel and hook push going north as far as we can. And this will bring us to right outside the jail cells where the Maiden is held. Now, this setup took quite a bit of time to figure out how to do. And all kinds of little finicky details with how it works. It actually has to do with the bombs that we placed and standing in the right spot and all kinds of other things.
Say hello and goodbye to the Sword and Shield.
It's the only time we get to see it. Now, even though we already have the Thieves Town Crystal, we do actually need to leave the boss room after we defeat Blind. And normally in Crystal dungeons, once the door closes, it doesn't reopen. And so the only way you typically get out of those rooms is by taking the Crystal, but we have the Thieves Town Crystal, and beyond that, we're not technically in a dungeon right now. The game thinks we're in a cave. So instead, we're doing what's called LSD blind, which is bringing up the select menu or the map or using the mirror as the maiden walks into the light. And that causes one of a few visual effects. This time we went for the color change. But by doing that, we actually interrupt part of the script that tells the door to close. You can kind of see it down there at the bottom. It's already open. Normally the door closes as soon as the maiden steps onto the light, but we interrupted that so the door stays open, we can leave, and we don't have to do an annoying teleport on those tiny little slopes.
Right. It's funny how there's two different ways to get out of that room.
It's one of the few that you can actually get out of. The next up, we're going to go head to Aga 2, and obviously the way to do that is by going through Tower of Hera.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah. And this is long overdue for this run, but shoutouts to Yuzuhara,
Oh yeah.
who discovered most of the glitches that we ever use in this game. We may find different applications of what he finds, but he usually finds the first.
We got a little bit of a crowd here, but that's fine. Oh.
Oh no!
By magic. So,
Well, time to use bombs.
it is time to use bombs, thank you. Yikes. Just gonna go by feel.
Well, it worked. I'm almost afraid to say it because I don't think it's happened in any of your practice, but because we have the Hera pendant, the door to this boss room is actually open. So we actually have to be a little bit careful down at the bottom there that we don't transition out of here.
No, we're not doing that. But thanks for the reminder.
It's very fortunate that the Aghanims don't really care what dungeon you're in when you fight them. Their fights just happen normally otherwise. Makes it really nice for their respective boss RTA categories.
That's true. And in boss RTAs, just like in this run as well, it's not just that you have to defeat a boss, you have to collect the prize associated with its dungeon.
And thankfully, Aghanim doesn't have a prize. I'm wondering if I should be pedantic about it, because there technically is a prize for the Aghanim Tower, but you're never supposed to get it that way.
So
The
you're
Ether
talking about
Medallion.
Ether? Yeah.
Yeah. It is technically the prize to Aga Tower, but you're
Entire
not supposed to collect it that way. Yeah. Yeah, you can get an Aga 2 fight in Aga 1 if you have a Dark World state, but if I remember correctly, you don't get the teleport to the pyramid, and you don't get a bird call either, so you have to be able to leave there afterward. It's actually kind of neat because the fight has a red Aghanim, a blue Aghanim, and a green Aghanim. It's really weird.
Yeah, it's great. I've always wanted to route Aga 2 at Aga 1 and Aga 1 at Aga 2 RTA, but just have never done it.
We could call those like mixed world Agas or something like that. Alright, so next up we're heading back to Skullwoods. And obviously the way we do that is by going down, even though it's in the top left of the Dark World. We do what's called... We do another map wrap to get here, and we're navigating relatively blind here. Just to get to the proper entrance. Fox, that's not Scudgewoods. Scudgewoods is when you go from Turtle Rock.
This is Brahmin Woods. Let's call it.
Now, it turns out in this rear part of Skull Woods, you technically need a sword to be able to cut the vine door to get to the boss, or, since this is a speedrun that allows major glitches, you can just use a Samaria block instead. Okay, not bad for that visual corruption. I wonder how... Oh, the menu is fantastic! This is about the nicest visual that you can have for it. There's typically a bit of an inverse relationship between being able to see on the screen normally and being able to see what's in your inventory. Where if you can't see what's on screen, odds are you can kind of tell what's going on in your inventory, but if you can see what's on screen, then you can't see your inventory at all when you bring it up, which can be kind of a worry, but not too much. This time we were lucky, though.
Oops. Let the crystal break. So this has been a good pace run. However, my PB has 0 blue balls. So this 5 or 6 or whatever it was might.
Yeah, you had at least 2 lightning, so you had it. Yeah, you had 5 or 6 there.
Yeah.
That and also the safety route with the torch key that you somehow made irrelevant by just getting to hover the first try, you madman.
Right. The PB also has the torch key and missed hovers.
Oh.
Which is pretty crazy. But the run is prone to disaster. Okay. Yes, I do. I thought we were doing this again.
Yeah, you do, because now we're doing the exact same clips, but instead of going to the right, we go left, and
yeah.
Instead of going to Skull Woods, we go to Swamp.
The 2 S dungeons.
Now, we've already defeated Argus, so all we need to do is get the crystal. So we're going to do another hook push, and actually kind of a series of hook pushes, just to get into the right position for the last one. This setup... This is something that Ruby found, right? Where we do a bunch of smaller pushes to get into the right position so that the longer push works. Basically, we're trying to get to the room that's to the right of us, which happens to be the Mothula boss room. So we're doing a whole bunch of precise order of Ancilla to set up memory. So there's our small pushes. Now we're going to set up a few more values of memory real quick so that the long push works. And there we go.
The hardest part about that is lamp, dust. You gotta get that dust in slot 1. Lamp flames go in 5, 4, and 3. 4, 3, and 2. Which means all of the flames have to be on screen when you get that dust in.
Yeah, and actually we don't have any bombs, so I was actually thinking of suggesting, why don't we use a bomb for that? But we don't have any right now, so that wouldn't work.
That's a good point. Sounds like it would make it easier.
We could probably use arrows too, but actually that might screw things up because arrows use different direction variables for no good reason. Anyway, this was actually the last of our dungeons and crystals, and now we get to see what happened after we deleted Ganon.
We beat the boss, apparently.
And there we go. Congratulations. GG.
GG. It also is a 1-second PB.
Really?
103.18.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so now we've reversed fortunes again, where we have a good first part of the run, and then bad RNG at the end, with just Aghanim, that is. So, yeah, pretty happy to get a PB caliber run for the marathon. So, thanks.
Which,
for
by the
joining
way,
me on
is
commentary.
world record, because Chex is the only one that's run this category.
Yes, there are those who are attempting the run, drunk future self, and yeah, I'd like to help create more resources to get people interested if they're interested. So,
It is a
it's lot
pretty
of fun.
amazing run on a technical sense.
So thank you, Octini, and everyone involved in getting us set up here and making this marathon happen. So keep donating. Thanks all.
Yeah, thank you so much. Where can we find y'all?
I'm chexhuman at Twitch, on Twitch that is. And Taj Show is TOJSO on Twitch.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for that run. That's going to be it for day 3 of RIPDebt Runs 2023. Finishing things off with a world record run. Congrats. So, yeah, we'll be back for our final day tomorrow, starting at noon Central Time with Ico, Stardew Valley, an RPG block, a whole lot more. Really exciting stuff. Definitely come check it out. We're also well on our way to hitting our goal of $1,000 for this event. So really happy to have you all come and watch, get your all donations, and see some awesome runs. So thanks everyone, and see you tomorrow.
All right, thank you everybody. Unironically though, Chex, do you want to keep the stream going for credits? Do you need them to submit?
No, thank you.
Okay. Because there's no run after you, so we got nowhere to be.
Keep in mind there's no leaderboard for this category.
Oh, that's fair. You invented it. All right. As Rajasi was just saying, yeah, we are done for the night, but we have one more day tomorrow. Tomorrow's a long one too. We're gonna go until pretty late at night. If you're in the United States, if you're in Europe, we're gonna go until the mid-morning. Thank you so much, everyone, for hanging out. I appreciate the donations. I appreciate the chats. I appreciate the support. Everybody is great. Again, we have one more day. I would love to be able to match our previous donation totals from our previous events, which have both been just over $1,000, which again translates to $100,000 in medical debt relieved. So everybody have a great night, and we will see you later.